Yes, Sheikh, thank you for coming to my house and talking with me and the brothers and Brother Abdul, who's not here right now, but talking to us about social etiquettes, about how to eat, how the Quran and the Sunnah taught us how to sleep, everything that we learned.
It's my pleasure, Ya Akhi. Barakallahu fikum. And thank you for allowing us to be at your house and enjoy this pleasurable time.
Shukran, jazakallahu khairan, barakallahu fikum. What I was wondering is, how do we teach our kids the mental sciences? How do we teach them worldly sciences?
This is once again the responsibility of the parents. Going back to the responsibilities of the parents, there are too many. Being a parent is not easy. Talking about education, for instance, acquiring knowledge, that the first word was revealed in the Quran to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was Iqra. Read.
Yeah.
Indicating the importance of knowledge, learning, and so on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah raises the believers amongst you, and those who are given knowledge are levels. They are not all evil. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Say, are they even? Those who know and those who don't know, they are never even. Yeah. That's why Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam once said that فَضْلُ الْعَالِمِ عَلَى الْعَابِدِ. You might see a big sheikh, a big turban, a long beard, and you get very impressed. But he might be just a abid, a worshipper, without an adequate knowledge. He's not a alim. So the Prophet ﷺ said that the superiority of a knowledgeable one over a worshipper is like the superiority of me over the least one in my ummah.
MashaAllah.
Yeah. And the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever seeks a path for seeking knowledge or acquiring knowledge, Allah will easify by that a path to the paradise.
Naam. One who takes a path to acquire knowledge, Allah will make a path easy for him to paradise. Because of that, our ummah actually was successful and into seeking knowledge, because there was a motive. The motive is that you don't want to learn just to be a knowledgeable person. No, because you're responding to the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and every kind of science and knowledge you're acquiring is making it clear to you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only God.
That reminds me of the hadith that you taught us quite days back about the إِمَّاتَ ابْنُ آدَمْ قَطَعَ عَمَلُهُ إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ.
Naam. Which is of course a very important hadith, that this is one of the things which benefit you even after your death.
Exactly. Yeah.
A useful knowledge, a beneficial knowledge, which you teach your children. So if you teach your children to read the Quran, man, that helps you even after you die. If you teach your children to pray properly, if you teach your children the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, if you teach them, if you take them to very good schools to learn, math, science, physics, chemistry, language, and that is used to benefit others and so on, that all adds up to your account of good deeds, even though you do not exist anymore.
SubhanAllah. I heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that in the Battle of Badr, Rasulullah took the captives and he only freed them if they taught 10 Muslims how to read and write.
Imagine, yes. So it was enough for a person to free himself from slavery and from imprisonment, a war prisoner, if he would just teach 10 of the Muslims who did not know reading nor writing, the illiterate Muslims. If he would teach them how to read and write, he will be free. All of that informs us about the importance of knowledge and the mental education of various kinds of sciences.
Why do you think the Muslims were so advanced thousands of years ago when Europe was like knee-deep in filth and scum and plague?
That saddens me to hear that. You know, I remember one of the Orientalists who studied Islam to attack it, actually. They said that, they admitted the fact that when Europe were living in dark ages, there was not a single illiterate person in Spain, called Andalus. There was not a single illiterate person in the entire Andalus. While in Europe, only the elite were able to barely read. Only the elite. Why is that? This is a very good question. Akhi, for two reasons. Number one, our religion, Al-Islam, keeps balance between what's religious and what's worldly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَابْتَغِ فِي مَا آتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةِ. Seek of that which Allah has provided you with, the home of the hereafter. So we live to work for the hereafter. However, وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. Do not forget to take your share of dunya. You know, eating, drinking, dressing nicely, getting married, having children, buying a new car, living in a nice house, acquiring the proper enough knowledge to make you advance. The second factor which made Muslims successful is that they had the motive. They learned why they have to learn and acquire knowledge, why they have to be advanced and in front of everybody else. Because everything they do is for the sake of Allah and is rewarded. But nowadays I remember that in the States I asked several of our children at high school, what's your goal? Now since you're senior and you go to college, what would you like to study? So the vast majority would say that I'd like to be a doctor. I'd like to study medicine. I'm going for a pre-med. So very few would say that I'd like to be a lawyer. Fine. So now we limited the choices between being a physician or a lawyer. Then the next question is why?
Why?
And the answer is very sad in most cases, which is because doctors
make more money.
make more money. And the only career which competes with the doctors is being a lawyer. Sometimes a liar, actually.
I think they go hand in hand.
You know, imagine.
Well, Sheikh,
So
if there is a specific kind of knowledge that we should teach to our children, or?
Oh yeah, you see, knowledge is an ocean.
Yeah.
Or you may say oceans. You can never encompass every kind of knowledge and science, but take as much as you can. There are certain sciences which are mandatory upon every person, especially Muslims, to learn. Sciences which will enable you to recognize Allah and His oneness, to recognize how to worship Allah properly, how to pray. The science of tajweed is mandatory upon every Muslim, and it is mandatory upon the parents to teach their children how to recite the Quran properly. And I will share with you a very interesting story in that respect. Once I was delivering a speech in one of the Islamic centers in the States, and I addressed the audience as that I would like to see some parents who will give one or two of their children for the sake of Allah, meaning to keep on parallel tracks, along with teaching them the worldly sciences, physics and chemistry and so on, also teach them the Quran, so that they were born, raised there, they have the mother tongue of the people, the local people. And meanwhile, they master their deen. They know how to recite the Quran properly. Probably they have memorized the entire Quran. They studied fiqh and so on. They will be actually the best da'iyah.
That I should send them to Sheikh or...
And guess what?
A
A few weeks later, a doctor came up to me and said that, Sheikh, I listened what you said, and I have 4 children, and I would like to donate to Allah one of them. Will you be able to assist me with? So it was actually a big test. Then he's trusting you with his child, one of his children, to make him memorize the Quran and study the fiqh and the sunnah and so on. Are you ready for the surprise? The child was 10 years old. In 2.5 years, he had finished the entire Quran, and he's not Arabic. He was never introduced. He mastered tajweed, he mastered the Quran, and we were taken along with that also, understanding some of the meanings of the words and the verses of the Quran. It's achievable, but you have to have an intention, and you have to have a will that you want to do it. and he was not interrupted from his regular school.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Well, in the first 2 years he was homeschooling. Then when he finished the Quran, he was back to school. But he never missed a class. He never missed a single year. And he is very, very successful in respect of worldly education as well.
What about, how do we get our children to become talib al-ilm?
Well, first, the parents have to have the interest in having their children acquire the adequate knowledge to make them better believers. You know? So, we begin with the recitation of the Quran properly. Second, learning how to pray, how to perform tahara. You know, the minimum requirement of being a Muslim.
This is a basic knowledge.
That's mandatory. Then, of course, there are other sciences which is not necessarily mandatory on every person, but it's mandatory on the entire ummah, that some of them have to learn to benefit the ummah. Agriculture, manufacturing, flying, you know, all of that. But once again, keeping in mind that I have to let my child know that why he's studying this. I have to let my daughter that why she's studying gynecology. Why? So that she will be a female physician who will treat the female Muslims, so that they don't have to go to a male physician, whether it's a Muslim or a non-Muslim. You know? The intention behind every act, especially seeking knowledge, is the key to success. And to bring in this ummah back to the leadership.
That's a sign at the end of the time that we will lose the leadership because we don't have knowledge.
No.
When you say Muslim a lot, is it, that's just for men or women also?
Well, the Prophet ﷺ said that طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ. Acquiring knowledge is mandatory upon every Muslim. Some people misunderstand and say, he said Muslim, not Muslim. No, it covers both. It covers both.
Both genders.
Male and a female.
Old or young.
As a matter of fact, during the life of the Prophet ﷺ, some of the companions' wives came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, we can have enough share like our men, that they learn every day, every time, and we don't get the same opportunity. So they asked the Prophet ﷺ to teach them. He said, well, designate certain times and days, which they did. Then the Prophet ﷺ used to teach them alone. He did not say, no, you don't have to learn. You know? So, and Sayyidah Hafsa, the Prophet's wife, she used to learn writing before Islam, before she was married to the Prophet ﷺ. And after she married to the Prophet ﷺ, he called the same teacher to teach her calligraphy. And she mastered the art of writing.
And the companion used to ask the mother of the believer, Aisha, about specific certain issues.
Do you have wudu?
No, I don't. I need to have wudu.
I know you need to have wudu, so let's go make wudu.
Okay.
Europe's forgotten heritage.
This is a sad reminder of the past history of the Muslims in the city. Nowadays, there are no Muslims anymore. These are the mosques that have remained. And it is really sad.
Wait a second, this is Morocco. No, this is Tunisia, Algeria, North Africa, Egypt. No, this is all Europe, and this is all part of Spain. Islam spread first in Africa, and then from Africa it came over to Europe, and then it did developing work in Europe. Now, we look the other way around nowadays. The compass was invented by the Muslims. Many important inventions came from the time of the Muslims on the Iberian Peninsula. Instead of people becoming less in battles, as we normally know, we know in battles obviously people die, but no, what was happening? The Spaniards recognized and realized the superiority of the Muslims and the treatment that the Muslims gave to the Christians and the Jews in Spain at that time, that they happily accepted Islam, many of them.
And not over the fountain, as we've seen it before in other places in Greece. Now, it has some Arabic on top, as well as it has some Arabic down, where the tap used to be, or where the water was coming out.
Pack your bags, grab your passports, and join Dr. Steph Keris as he takes us through Europe and rediscovers Europe's forgotten heritage, only on Hoda TV.
So what about educating women, ya Sheikh?
As I said, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala equated between men and women in respect of acquiring knowledge, in respect of takalif, that He asked us to pray and women to pray. He asked us to fast, and He asked them to fast and pay zakah, equally perform hajj. So for them to learn about that, it's like men exactly. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not really make any difference between men and women in respect of reward and responding to His call. He says, عز وجل, من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن فلنحيينه حياة طيبة. He, whoever does righteous deeds, whether it's a male or a female, while he's a believer, Allah will give him a goodly life. And once again He says, وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِنَ الصَّالِحَاتِ مِنْ ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنْثَى وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَأُولَئِكَ يَدْخُلُونَ الْجَنَّةَ وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ نَقِيرًا. Whoever does righteous deeds, whether it's a male or a female, man or a woman, while they are believers, فَأُولَئِكَ يَدْخُلُونَ الْجَنَّةَ. They will enter paradise and they will not be wronged and ought. So there is no distinction between a man and a woman in that respect. So seeking knowledge is necessary for them. As a matter of fact, the Prophet ﷺ has said that one who has 3 daughters or 3 sisters or 2 daughters or 2 sisters, فَأَدَّبَهُنَّ, and he disciplines them, he educates them until they grow up and they get married, فَلَهُ الْجَنَّةِ.
MashaAllah.
You do not necessarily you receive the same reward every time with the boys, but with the girls.
Yeah.
You know, many people think, because those who keep listening and watching the Western media, they believe that women been oppressed in Islam and so on, which is all stereotyping, because simply that, as you mentioned, that al-Mu'mineen Aisha used to teach the entire Ummah after the Prophet ﷺ. She was a great scholar.
This is important hadith for those who hate girls or dislike girls.
Naam. You know that the most authentic book after the Quran is
Lulu wa Marjan.
Sahih al-Bukhari. The sound collection of Imam al-Bukhari.
Al-Lu'lu' wal-Marjan.
Imam al-Bukhari, one of his teachers were a woman.
MashaAllah.
Imam al-Shafi'i, one of his teachers in Egypt was a woman.
Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah had 4 women teachers.
Subhanallah. So how would you teach if you don't have the adequate knowledge to teach?
So there's something that I think we should talk about here, because most of the schools here, they're mixed. Like, not even here. Like, maybe you can ask Brother Ismail, when he was in the States.
No. Actually, we have to keep balance between the fact that we have to teach boys and girls as well, and meanwhile, we have to keep the Sharia in practice.
I know when I was coming up through school from K through H, from kindergarten to high school, we were completely mixed. And they even said as boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, all the way through. And it makes it real hard to study when you start to reach 12, 13, 14 years old. Your hormones start kicking in, and there's women everywhere. And in America, women, as you can testify to, Sheikh, they're naked. They're not wearing any clothes.
Ya Hussam, since I have the experience of both, I was privileged enough by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I studied in Al-Azhar since kindergarten. Okay? So I had the privilege of studying on separate campus throughout my different stages of schools and so on, even in college, until I graduated. And I have to admit, that really helped me to focus and concentrate. In addition to, it eliminated the factors of distraction and committing sins. Because قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ, I didn't have really to bother because all around me are just boys. That was a privilege. Meanwhile, I taught in schools and universities in the United States. And I saw that boys next to girls. And as as he described them, كَاسِيَاتٍ عَارِيَاتٍ. Imagine that you're sitting and a girl in front of you wearing what I call it, not wearing. How much attention would you have?
Wearing nothing.
No, the issue is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's law is the most reliable law.
No, without a
And
doubt.
not mixing men and women at work, not mixing men and women even while acquiring knowledge is mandated by the Sharia. You know? And I think now in the States they're
In Virginia, they're trying to
some
separate
states
the boys
they're
and
calling
girls.
for it to have separation, totally different campuses for boys and campuses for girls.
And it's also big in the States now to have different uniforms, like to make people wear uniforms. So make the girls dress, they're called charter schools. Make the girls dress modest and make the boys dress modest.
Well, I would like to see that applied in all public schools in the States. But alhamdulillah, you guys in Muslim countries are blessed to avoid all of that. And
But there's one problem, that the good schools, most of the good schools are mixed. Like you can't find a very, very good school that is, like not...
You're talking about like the private schools.
Yeah, the
Well,
private schools, like
Hassan, if you're having the choice, then make as pharmacologists say. There is a rule which is known as a benefit-risk ratio, which is benefit versus risk.
Yes.
Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands you to take care of your child's education. Okay? And meanwhile, you're going to teach them what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. So are you going to contradict yourself? You're going to teach him that Allah says you're not supposed to do this, meanwhile you're doing it on daily basis? No. There are so many good schools where if you have even to move to a society where they offer a good schooling, separate, that will be fine. Those who live in Muslim societies and Muslim countries do not face the same challenge like those who live in the non-Muslim societies.
Of course.
And that's why there the call will be raised to establish Islamic schools in the Western societies, where Muslim communities now are growing.
And growing.
Unfortunately, they are spending money on building masajid and ignoring the fact that schools are as important as mosques and
Well,
masajid.
they build these, like, I know where I'm from, in Denver. We built this huge masjid. We did a $2.5 million remake on it, put all these classrooms in the downstairs, but then they said, well, no one can use these classrooms. So like, they just, bam, shot themselves in the foot, instead of establishing an Islamic school where the kids could be raised knowing Quran and Sunnah. They just shot
Because
themselves
actually
in the
the function of the masjid was a school, an institute that graduated the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, then the followers, then all scholars. Until recently, as a matter of fact, until today, they keep some classes in Al-Azhar Mosque in Cairo as this is a university where they study in the masjid. So if the masjid does not serve the purpose of teaching, then, I can just pray anywhere. And unfortunately in the West there is there is what I call it analgesic or sometimes hypnotic, which is Sunday school. This practice once again is taken from the Western culture, that you say, well, I keep balance. I send my kids either to public schools or to private schools, Catholic schools. Then I send them to Sunday school where they learn for a couple of hours the Quran and the Sunnah. Do you think that if you've been poisoned throughout the entire week, 5 days a week, several hours every day, all day almost long, then 1 or 2 hours will be sufficient to provide you with the antidote?
We used to go to the masjid on Saturdays, and for Salat al-Dhuhr, I was like, man, it's going to be full of those kids, because you're trying to pray, and they're like, bah! And then, their mom and dad don't show up until after the Salat to pick them up.
It's like a babysitting.
Yeah, it's not for anything.
No. Education has to be consistent, and there has to be curriculums, and there has to be a plan, and good teachers. Choose for your children good teachers. And actually we have to establish the Islamic schools in a way that it should compete with any other school. And I would seize this opportunity and I would remind you, Hussam, and myself, and everybody else, beware of private schools. Some people, especially those who are financially capable, they say, well, I avoid the danger of the public school because you know how bad is it? Even for non-Muslims. I know so many non-Muslims, local Americans for instance, they don't send their kids to public school, and since they cannot afford private schools, they homeschool their children.
Yeah, this is another option.
No.
Exactly. There's something
Homeschool is a great option, actually. I know a lot of brothers in the States that homeschool their kids, and they keep them with the Quran and the Sunnah, and they teach them Arabic at home, and they don't have to worry about public art teaching them another
Actually,
religion.
this is one of the best solutions nowadays to avoid the danger and the devastating effect of whether it's a public school or a private school. Talking about private school, Osama, since you haven't visited our Western society, it's awful.
Allahu Akbar.
That imagine that kid would come to you on Sunday school. They come to you to the masjid on Sunday school, where you're taking voluntarily a class to teach. Then you ask, "Who's Jesus?" And somebody will just jump and say, "It's God." His name is Ahmed or Afdal or Mahmoud. He's Muslim, and his parents are Muslims who immigrated and brought him to the school to learn on Sunday school. But imagine that he's been taught this consistently, every day, on daily basis, in the private school, Catholic school, where they also take them to churches. Actually, not too many people, not too many Muslim parents pay attention to the danger of those private schools. And guess what? As kids grow up and they make the wrong choice, and that's a free country, parents come to realize that what went wrong? What went wrong is that you talk totally the opposite direction. You went south. Because the Quran and the Sunnah is this way. And
you put your kids that way.
And you put them the other way. You entrusted non-Muslims to teach your children about God, about His oneness. And you adopted the theory that we're all the same and all will end up in paradise and so on. So you were very happy with that, then that's fine. The children chose to be otherwise because they know that they will end up in paradise as well if they make another choice, different than yours.
I know a Saudi brother, they have, Nadi Saudi where I'm from, and brother we're sitting there, we're talking, and it was around the holiday of Christmas. And they said, they asked me, because they knew that I was a revert to Islam, so they said, why do people celebrate Christmas? And he said, because they're celebrating the birth of God. And he didn't even, and his dad said, his dad moved within 2 weeks back to Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Because he was like, man, I can't believe that my kid said that. That's something he was taught in the public schools, because that's the way it is. So it's time to pray. So let's hit it up and make some salat.
Brothers, I would like once again to end up this meeting with a beautiful dua. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين وجعلنا للمتقين إماما سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك and see you inshallah next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Ba